Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. The topic, what is the best years in wrestling? When you look at the years that has been in professional wrestling, maybe, Jack, the years you've been around it, Rodney, you've been around it, or maybe we wasn't even around. What is the best years in wrestling? Jack, I'll start with you.
Well, personally for me was my first real interaction with the industry started in 1975. I mean, I had watched it before, of course, all my life, but at 16, I became involved for the first time. And then when I joined the Army and wound up being stationed in Columbus, Georgia at Fort Benning, to me, that was the greatest wrestling I had ever seen in my life. With the first card I seen was main evented by the Masked Superstar and Wrestling 2 in a cage match. And it never, even the bad matches then were still great. To me, that was the era that hooked me. It was when the Freebirds came to Georgia. It was just a time of magic to me. So that is my favorite.
He got so excited about it, he got stuck in time right there.
There he is. Where was I at? My bar keeps going up and down.
You were saying that was just your great time, and I thought at that point, I think you got stuck in that time. Which
is 75, the early 80s. That was my time period of what I consider the best.
Rodney, best years in wrestling in your mind.
Okay, I've got three.
All right,
I'm going to put it on there. I'm going to start with 1978 Georgia. That was the Superstar Wrestling 2 round one. Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff jumping Dusty Rhodes in the parking lot. We saw Austin Idol make his first appearance there. It was just a stellar year. Next part was 1984 Mid-South Wrestling. Never better wrestling ever. I think that if anybody has never seen 1984 in Mid-South, you are truly missing it. Absolutely. And by the way, Jim Cornette did manage Bobby Eaton, for those who did not know. 1986 is another one. I mean, you think about it. Continental is on fire. Jim Crockett Promotions on fire. And then Mid-South UWF is just kind of there. But still, Continental was on fire for sure. And so was Jim Crockett Promotions.
I'm going to look at when I think of it, I think 1978. I think the whole wrestling Superstar coming into Atlanta. First of all, we thought it was the spoiler. To be honest,
we did.
We thought it was.
We did. We swore up and down. It was
like the same guy until he and even his interviews was kind of close to what the spoiler did. I thought that was tremendous. The Wrestling 2 Superstar, the matches were, we got the opportunity to go see those matches live and in person. All the matches were so good. But Dusty Rhodes getting jumped in the parking lot, probably one of the biggest angles Georgia had ever done. Which, how many times did that try to be replayed throughout the years in wrestling because it got over so well. But that stuff, Tommy Rich getting his hair cut on television by Ivan Koloff, Ole Anderson, that was just a great year. And then I have to go in 1983. Even though business wasn't great, Tommy Rich Buzz Sawyer had a great feud. I think that I have to look at that and say that they had a great feud in wrestling. I'm with Rodney with 1986 Continental Wrestling. Also, being able to watch Jim Crockett Promotions on TBS, I thought that was good. And then I'll have to go 1998 WWF. I thought the Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin stuff was superb. And I always loved The Rock. I always thought he was tremendous at what he did. So I'll have to go. I think it was from 1998 to 2000. And then after that, he just went downhill very quickly. But I thought that was 2 good years. Charles Bellflower said he believed 1967 to 1983 was the good years. So evidently Charles Must have went downhill after that. But there was some good, to me, there was some good years after that. But 1990 on, except for that, just that 2
Well,
years.
according to where you were, like I never got to see Mid-South Wrestling.
Yeah.
So, till they became UWF before I could actually pick them up on the big dish that I had, that took up like 5 acres in my 2-acre yard. So.
Terence Hardy said 1975 to 1985. So he's got a 10-year deal there.
I'll
there
tell
was
you that
bad years in Georgia Championship Wrestling, by the way.
That 76, 77, awesome years in Georgia. You had Ole and Gene against Thunderbolt Patterson and Bill Watts at the time. It was just awesome. Just awesome. You had the Spoiler in Wrestling 2. You had Dick Slater in 77 in Wrestling 2. It was some really good wrestling then.
Yeah, now the Dick Slater Wrestling 2 matches I thought were better than the Wrestling 2 Superstar matches. They'll still go down as the top matches of the really Dick Slater and Wrestling 2 top matches I'd ever watched live. Those matches were so good. Richard Hood said his was the best years of wrestling was the 1970s to the early 80s. I like the 70s really much better than I like the 80s. I thought wrestling kind of took a turn in the 80s.
Did it look to me, and I may be speaking out of turn, but it looked to me by the 80s they got desperate. The stars were not there anymore. And we're going to talk more about that in another episode.
Michael Barr said that I watched when I was a child. Mom and Dad watched it way back in the 70s, and I kept quiet as they watched. To me, the late 70s, all the 80s territory wrestling, and then to the early mid 90s. Rick Brooks said that he believed the late 60s to early 80s was the best, and if you would have probably. If our father was alive right now, he would probably tell you the 60s. He would probably tell you the 60s was a good time because the Fargos was huge in the 1960s, and that was his people that he connected to. You can learn a lot from the wrestling's past of how people connected with people, and I'm not saying that people don't connect with people now. They do. There's just not enough wrestling fans anymore to. Let's see. You messed with Dusty. I was ready to fight. And not everybody did.
It was very strange because Dusty had headlined the last few Omni shows in Atlanta for weeks after the parking lot incident. So Dusty was completely off the card, and the main event at the Omni was Wrestling 2 against the Superstar, and everybody was quite delighted with the house that night.
Yes.
We didn't get a chance to go to that one, but it was very impressive without Dusty on the card with just Wrestling 2 against Superstar. And they had been building that for weeks. And I believe that was the first time they'd actually wrestled.
Michael Barr asked this question: what years did wrestling stop losing its ratings, or just not as interesting as the early years? I don't think wrestling really stopped losing ratings until the 90s. I think that was when it happened. Even what happened to the territories, it did have really nothing to do with the actual wrestling. It had to do with television stations. And a lot of people blame Vince McMahon, but it wasn't Vince McMahon that was the problem. It was the infomercial. That was the problem. They wanted to, these people were paying fortune for these infomercials. Yep. And so your show could get canceled because, the Veg-O-Matic was paying $1,000 for that time slot because they could sell that many. And it wasn't Vince. It was just what happened in that. So I
know in the region where I live, cable television wasn't really a thing until the 90s.
Yeah.
We started getting installed. But once you got that option in there and you went from 4 channel sources, your 3 networks and PBS, and all of a sudden you get 40 or 50 choices, wrestling kind of took a back seat, from that point forward. And I don't know that it ever, I don't know that it just that their the popularity wane per se as much as there were so many other choices. Yeah, and that's what that's what we look at today. Raw's drawing 1.8 millions, and the network is tickled to death over that stink. I mean, we think it's appalling, and in a lot of ways it is. But they're even out there with all the other programs that are on the top rated programs on Monday night. So, there's just too many choices out there.
Yeah,
Michael, now it's time for everything. And now it's time for me to clean this up right here.
Go right ahead.
I'm gonna clean this up.
The cleaner. Somebody's got that gimmick, and I won't mention his name, but you go.
Ratings started to drop when Vince McMahon bought WCW. For whatever reason, it just lost right then. Right. You can pinpoint that moment. It's when those ratings started to dip. That it was the beginning of the end. I mean,
millions of fans left and never came back. I don't know where they went, but they never returned.
When WCW left, the theory was that Vince was going to pick up all those millions of people, and he didn't.
No,
they just quit watching.
It's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And I'm just wondering what would have happened if he was able to negotiate the deal with TNT and TBS and try to keep that going. I wonder if it would have changed things.
Well, it had to be better than AEW is doing now, folks.
Well, am I right? Would you not pinpoint that the slow creeping decline from that moment where Vince brought out
Vince had anyone to compete against? And they talk about today AEW and Vince. AEW is not even a. It's not even.
Well, here's AEW was barely. I think they may have cracked 1 million views one time when they were going head to head with NXT. But NXT left. NXT was drawing 700,000.
Yeah.
Okay. AEW was 8.9, 9.1, somewhere in there. Well, now that they moved nights, they did a 1.2. Okay, but that's still 500,000 people that did not switch over to AEW.
Yeah.
They just decided, well, we're just go to Tuesday nights and watch, and their numbers are staying consistent on Tuesday nights. So they didn't lose their audience, and AEW didn't pick up, but just a few.
Wow.
You're a WWE fan. You're a WWE fan. You're loyal to their product. And that happened to the territories as well. They, for years, they were loyal to Southeastern Championship Wrestling, loyal to Continental Championship Wrestling, and for years that did take place. The only thing that changed Continental was when Hulk Hogan came to town. That was always the deciding factor. So when folks say that Hulk Hogan didn't draw money, Hulk Hogan was the only person that could be brought in to the territories, and he would sell the place out.
Yep.
And he didn't even have to wrestle anybody. They just have to say he's going to make a special appearance. That was the thing. All right, if you enjoyed this video, I know we got off what is the best years of wrestling. We got off that a little bit.
Aaron wants to chime in just real quick.
Oh, Aaron said, I really enjoyed the 70s, 80s. It was great then. I thought it was up to Starrcade 93. If you enjoyed this video, even though we got off of what's the best years in wrestling to some other things, give us the big thumbs up. Subscribe to the page if you haven't already. Go one step further, hit that notification bell, and share the video. Did I just say? Yeah, that's what I said. We'll see you in the next video. And maybe next time we'll stay on topic.
Maybe.
See you then.
I doubt it.